All right, now let's transition to the next thing Jesus says of himself here. He says, the one who is holy, and the next thing he says is the one who is true. Now, I don't think any of us are on the fence about this in regards to Jesus. Are you? Do you have any questions? I wonder, is Jesus true? Now, we don't mean true like he actually is real and exists. What do we mean what does he mean if he says, I am the one who is true?
He is what he says and everything he says that he is.
Good. Genuine. Worthy. Anybody else? I think trustworthy is a good word for this here. Reliable. What's that?
There is no one else.
Yeah. No one comes close to his faithfulness, his reliability, his genuineness, and all these other things. What he says he is, what he promises he'll do, he'll do. It reminds us of what he said we, his disciples, are meant to be like. The Sermon on the Mount is basically Jesus saying, here's who I am, be like me. Right? Everything he taught is who he is. And remember what he said? Because of the weirdness of what the Jewish people, particularly the leadership, had done with oath-taking in their generations, Jesus got so sick of the way they were manipulating people with their oath-taking. Do you remember what he taught his disciples, these Jewish disciples? He's like, no, you don't need to listen to them about the oaths. Listen to me. Stop with the oaths already. No more oaths. I don't care if you're swearing on heaven itself or swearing on the earth below or swearing on your own head. Just cut it out. And instead of oath-taking, what did Jesus say is how we're meant to live with each other? Isn't that him saying, I want you to be true to your word? Where you say what you mean what you say, you do what you say you're going to do. All that. Just be reliable people. We don't have to con anybody into believing you because you know you're lying, And that's what Jesus is all about. He's all about making us to be like himself. Every command is Jesus saying, hey, be like me. I'm inviting you into my nature, my character. So the Greek word here is used 28 times in the New Testament, so it is a fair showing. And it means true to the facts. So in other words, if you were to take what is understood to be true and compare whatever you're comparing to it, it lines up. Okay? So it's true to the facts. It's true to reality. And so Jesus will always clearly and accurately portray reality to you. Which goes back to not manipulating. He's not trying to hide this. He's not trying to sugarcoat that. He gives it to you straight. And oh my gosh, is there any doubt that we want a world like that? Right? Especially when politicians have way too much airtime in our lives. Where it's not just politicians either. It's business people. It's the bait and switch of the business world. It's people in our own lives on a personal level. There are people who have known so many people like this that they honestly are always wondering, when is the other shoe going to drop? What is your agenda? What are you up to? I've met people who it took years of just living life with them and proving that I'm not up to anything, I'm not trying to get anything from you, before they would even open slightly the door of their trust, because they were so sick of trusting people and then being taken for a fool, being duped. Now, Jesus is offering you a glimpse at a person himself where you can be completely at ease that he's got no hidden agendas. He's not trying to fool you. There's no, man behind the curtain, He's showing himself to be this, but really he's that little thing behind there. He is who he is, and you can know who he is by listening to him. Now, is this not a challenge to the church? To the individuals and to the whole church at large? Are we ever trying to project something about ourselves to woo people to like us that just isn't accurate, isn't true? We become like salespeople. We're trying to put the nicest spin on things we can about ourselves. So either people come to our church or they like us personally or whatever it is. Instead of just saying, well, here I am. Here I am. Now you know what I am. Do you want it or not? That's up to you,
So is it like me as a mom whenever, this is, of course, whenever my kids were younger, but and the phone would ring and I'd be like, with the kids, and hello.
Right? Boy, the switch can go so fast. I've been this way on the way to church, especially when we were driving or something. frustration at home, people running late, people being obnoxious. And rah, 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 you open the door. Hey, brother. How you doing? Oh, it's great. Too blessed to be stressed, you know. It's like, oh, it's true.
So true. Yeah, but I've noticed though, like no matter how stressed and upset I am, when I'm in the presence of my brothers and sisters, and I know I'm going to worship my Jesus with them, it's just...
Yes.
It's not that I'm different, it's just that the stress that is built up, it's not like, oh.
I'm changed, yes. I'm genuinely changed.
Yeah,
that's right.
It feels so good.
No, I should be able to be honest, and when I see someone, be like, I got to tell you what, right now, I'm a little worked up, but I cannot wait to share worship with you because that's going to change the story. Like that, that's fair. Like that's perfectly right. And actually, I think that's encouraging to people. Because they're probably thinking the same exact thing and they don't want to say, but just to hear you say, oh, this has been a rough morning, but I cannot wait to get into this with you guys. Like I'm all for that. That's beautiful. So anyways, let's talk about Jesus himself. In the scriptures, speaking of this word true, I wanted to point out that in the letters of Revelation, Jesus is very interested with his eyes of fire. That's going to keep coming up, I guarantee. With his eyes of fire, he keeps pointing out what appears to be this way, but what is actually this way. He is the truth bringer about things that appear different than they really are. Can you think of any examples just in these letters to the churches? It's just about in every letter that you see it somewhere.
Yeah, it's like they see themselves as this, but Jesus says this is what you really are.
That's right.
I mean, you can look at every single one and he does that pretty much.
Yeah, it's either the church itself or there's somebody that is doing that to the church. Like, for instance, in the church of Ephesus, chapter 2, verse... where was it? Verse 2. There are people who claim to be apostles, right? They're setting themselves up. They're portraying themselves to be authoritative messengers of Jesus. And he says, but you figured out they're not. Good for you. You saw the truth through the veneer that they were trying to set up. How about in the church letter to Smyrna? By the way, this is going to repeat itself in the letter to Philadelphia. But he speaks of those in chapter 2, verse 9. Those who say they're Jews, but they're not. We talked about what that means. That they, by God's standard, they have forsaken the ways of God by forsaking Messiah. So they're no longer a part of his covenant people. But they thought they looked this way, but Jesus saw the truth about it. How about in Pergamum? Where was it? These teachers, like the ones after the way of Balaam, the ones who are with the Nicolaitans, they say they represent Jesus' word. They say that they are speaking for him. And Jesus is like, no, I didn't send them. I hate what they do. I hate what their message is. How about in Thyatira? What do you see there? Now, of course, she says, I've got the deep secrets. I can teach you things that others just don't know. Listen to me. Come into my bed, or whatever weird stuff she was up to. And Jesus is like, actually, she's like a spiritual prostitute. I'm going to punish that girl. She's going to die. Her children are going to die. Yeah, he saw through that one, no doubt. In Sardis, the church itself was the problem in Sardis. They thought themselves... and others thought them alive. But Jesus, the true one, saw what's true, what matches up to actual reality. He's like, guys, I got to tell you, you are dead, and you, most likely what he means to get at later is you're asleep. Anybody ever, by the way, ever had your own false view of yourself shattered by Jesus? Mm-hmm. Oh, I have. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's painful, but it's so good. It's so liberating, but when you first experience it, you're like, oh, I can't breathe. I was just reading something else, and they used this term cognitive dissonance. And I was like, I have experienced that, where your whole worldview is challenged, and you're like, wait, have I seen this wrong the whole time? Like, oh, Jesus has done that to me.
I felt beat up.
Yeah.
And that was a time when another woman was living in our house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, bad.
It'll send you, yeah.
Bad.
You come away going, who am I? I thought I knew things about me, and they're not true. Here in Philadelphia, as we're going to see, there's those same Jews who claim to be Jews. This is chapter 3, verse 9. who claim to be Jews, but they're not. They're liars. Jesus saw that about them. And in Laodicea, perhaps the most famous rebuke in all of the world in the Scriptures. Who doesn't know this thing about lukewarm? You're either hot or cold, but you're not either. I'm going to spit you out. Like, who doesn't know that thing, right? But remember what he said. Verse 17, chapter 3, verse 17. You say, you think this is true. I'm rich. I've acquired wealth and don't need a thing. But you don't realize. This is what's true. This is what my eyes of fire are seeing, everybody. You're actually wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Oh my gosh. Talk about cognitive dissonance. Oh my goodness. Everything I thought of myself was a total lie. And it took the one who is true to not only know that it's true, but what is the crucial thing about Jesus that's so good but so hard? He doesn't stick to just knowing it. What does he want to do?
He wants you to know it.
Yes, because him knowing it and you being ignorant of it is going to kill you. And he loves. He loves his people too much. He loves the sinner too much to just let them carry on in their blissful ignorance and die. So he does this really hard thing that people don't like but need desperately. He comes along and says to them, here's what is actually true that you're not seeing. And this is what he did to the Pharisees and teachers of the law that got him into so much trouble. You read Matthew 23, one of the harshest areas of Jesus' words, his teaching, so harsh against these people. He pulls no punches, calls them terrible things, because he knew, and you can almost see it progress through the Gospels, how he had to ramp up his language, ramp up his rhetoric, because in everything that he was doing, they kept proving themselves hard-hearted, resistant, and deaf. And it was almost like he had to get really in their face and loud with them just to try to get what's true into their heads. They weren't listening. Jesus is so good to do this to us. Now, here's a very important thing we need to think through. Do we imitate that part of his character? Where if we understand something is true of somebody else that they don't seem to see, do we love them enough to go let them know? This is what Jesus was getting at in Matthew 18. If a brother or sister sins against you or sins generally, which I think has to do with any offense, anything that's come between you and your joyful relationship together, what did he say to do about it? Go and tell them about it. And how many times have you had an issue with someone? They had no idea. No idea. I've been in that boat. And it took a really long time for someone to let me know I had done something that really bothered them. I'm just carrying on, doop-de-doo, and hey, and they're like, hi. Oh, they must have had a bad day. And after a long time, it comes out, usually through somebody else telling me, which is the tragedy of the whole thing. Oh my gosh, you've been hurt by me this whole time, and I was oblivious. I wish you would have told me. We could have settled this like 3 months ago. And this is so vital to the church's unity and power in our world, that we would just be like Jesus, be true ones. And if I've got an issue with you, I don't talk to him, I don't talk to her, I don't bring it up subtly in prayer time that brother so-and-so needs prayer because they've been real jerk to me, But we simply go to the person and we're true to them. And what we say is loving. We always speak the truth in love, but it's true. Instead of this facade where I'll act nice towards you because I don't want to be a jerk, but I'm pretty mad at you and I don't want to see your face. That kind of thing. So everything about Jesus that's true is modeling for us who we're meant to be. And if there's anything in us that's manipulative, that is keeping things in the shadows to protect our own reputation, our own comfort levels, we're being called by Jesus to learn from him, the true one. Let's put it out there in love so that healing can happen and fellowship can be restored and things like that.
I think the problem is it's not always receptive as love.
That's correct.
Because you know how much trouble that's got me in my life.
Yes.
Because you don't usually have to wonder what I'm thinking. I'm probably going to tell you. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I've always been. But it's not receptive well.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the person themselves who just want to say, don't judge me. Who do you think you are? Get out of my business. And other times, I've done it. Mostly at home. I make the most mistakes at home. I'm sure you understand that.
I do.
Not my checkbooks are important.
Yeah.
I like what Proverbs says, that an enemy multiplies kisses.
Thank you. Very good. And the friend who strikes you is actually preferable to the kisses of an enemy. That's right. And think about that. That's a great proverb. Thank you. Well, think about what is going on. What is the dynamic there? That your enemy who wants you to be harmed and to come to ruin, when they're in your company, they're in your presence, they, oh, kissy kissy up to you. What does that tell you about them? They're up to something, right? They don't even want you to know they're your enemy because this is going to be a surprise attack. That's dirty business. At least tell me that you're up to something so we can deal with this. But
if you truly love someone, you be honest and tell them what they need to hear.
yeah.
But in it, like the Bible says, in love and in gentleness.
Yeah. And by the way, by definition, love demands that I do what's best for another person. It isn't loving, actually, to keep back something that might help somebody, even if it's unpleasant. If it's needed, that's love's demands that I do that. So there are so many implications here about Jesus' statement, he is the true one. You can rely on him to give it to you straight. Which is why when he says things like, you got to love me more than you love your father, mother, child, I really don't like what he says. But I thank him for saying it. Because if he didn't, what do I got? Wandering around like a fool like I always was. It's the teachings of Jesus that set you straight because he's telling you what he sees with his eyes of fire. He sees reality that no one else sees. And also, he's willing to tell you the reality that others know already but won't tell you. He's so reliable when he speaks to you. So, when Jesus says that he's holy and he's true, he is setting up the church to hear him. Because as the Holy One, he has the authority to speak. And as the true one, you can trust what he says. Take this to the bank. Everything I'm about to tell you, you can hold on to it. And that's why he has said several times, he'll say it again here, when he says, hold on to my words, my commands, it's for that reason, because you can trust it. This you can cling to. With other people's words, you kind of cling to it with one hand and keep your other hand on something else, just in case it gives. But this, put your full weight on this. Put your full weight on this. It's not going to topple you. All right. Yeah.
Could you back up and repeat? How did you say that love commands us to be?
Demands. Love demands that we tell people what they need to hear. Yeah. Because love is doing what's best for another person. Even at personal cost. And that's why we usually don't do it. It'll cost us. Either attention or, like you're saying, like whatever they're going to throw back at me or something. They're going to talk to my friends about what a judgmental jerk I am. Like it's going to cost me to tell them the truth. But that's why it's loving. I care more about you than about me. I'll take the hit because you need this, That's the hardest part about love.
And that doesn't matter what their salvation is, because that's another way to show them love.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason that they may not respond. They may respond differently because of that.
Yeah. And by the way, I've experienced it, but also more of the stories I know are from what others have testified about. The initial response is not always a good gauge of how well someone's taken it, actually. Because most of us could probably testify, at the moment this is going down, I am immediately like, but now that that's in my mind, the Holy Spirit's got something to work with, and he's gonna. I do my work, take the blows, whatever they are, I move on, and I trust that my Father, through his Spirit, is going to do something good with it. Now, the person can just choose what to do with it, but the Spirit won't let that just lie. He's going to just work that in there. And how many times, I don't know if this has happened to you, I'm betting it has, given a little time of cool down, people will sometimes come back to you and say, I was thinking about what you said. Oh, how many times I've heard that. I was thinking about what you said. And I don't know, I don't like how you said it, or it still upsets me that you said it, but I think you're right. And now change can happen. Now there's this kingdom moment of glorious repentance. I love it.
I think something got to add to that, though, is whenever you do go to someone and tell them what you think, You darn well better be right.
Yes, thank you. Be prayerful. Be thoughtful. When you just start smacking your gums just because you have a thought in your head, that is not humble. It is not Christ-like. Because remember, at the heart of Jesus being the one who is true, it's that exact thing. The only reason he's saying it is because it's true, not just because he thinks it. It's true. Yeah, I only want to give people what's true. Yeah.
One thing advice I've given to all my grandkids, because people are, we were just talking about, but I've told them all, I said, don't even think about getting married until you've dated somebody for at least 2 years. Because by then all the crap's out of the way and the true person starts to show. You can put on a front for a long time, but sooner or later it's going to come out.
Isn't that one of the devastating ways that the lack of being true has just wrecked lives? Yeah. I've known several people who say, I married him, and the day we got married is a different person. Oh! If ever there was a bait and switch, that's the worst. Because now I've covenanted to be with you the rest of my life based on a lie. You're exactly right. Well, not necessarily every time, but I've seen the results of that, yeah.
Does, telling people what they need to hear in love, does it hold true for both believers and unbelievers?
Yeah, and I think sometimes it changes how you do it. Because with a brother or sister in Christ, when I speak to them, I get to appeal to their covenant with Jesus, our shared allegiance to His Word. I can't do that with an unbeliever. So I think it changes the way you do it, but the fact that I'm doing it, I think, stays the same. Because they need truth. They really do. They need to see the world through Jesus' eyes, however well they can, and that depends on the person. But
to know that you're truly doing it out of love.
Yeah, and the tone and the body language and all that says so much, probably even more than your words do. But
if it's coming in the Spirit from Christ too, when your words are spoken, that's gonna show through when you're saying those words to that non-believer, that it is in love. They will feel it because that is going to be in you.
And they walk away knowing they still love me. They're not saying this as a goodbye, I can't stand you. They're saying this as and I'm going to carry on with you. Whatever you do with this, I love you. But you need this, and that's going to do so much. Because a lot of people in the world will tell you what they think and stomp out of the room. And when you're ready to agree with me, we can talk. But no, that's not me. I love you. I'll be with you, but you need to know this. Yeah.
I was going to say, as a Christian, I believe it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with another Christian or a non-Christian. You have to be the same. You have to act the same. Or then, if not, then you're a hypocrite. Because you're doing one thing and you're saying another thing. So what you believe doesn't make any difference. And I think it's probably maybe even more important to be just as honest with a non-Christian, because they're going to respect you for that. If you're right, they're going to respect you for that, and they're going to look at you a little bit different. Maybe somewhere down the line, that's the way they want it.
And I love what God said to Israel is really cool, and He says a lot to them in the first 5 books of the Bible, through Moses. But one of the things He promised Israel is if they would listen to His laws and do it, the onlooking nations would see them live this weird way, this holy way, set apart and different. And they would say, what a wise people they are, and give glory to God. And I think that goes along with what you're saying. As they hear us lovingly show them wise things that the world's not going to tell them, but we have this unique insight through Jesus, as they do think about it and they live their life, maybe 3 years later, they're like, dang, if you weren't right, you are a wise people. Where is this wisdom coming from? Well, let me tell you about a man named Jesus, That's awesome.
I think too, Ron, and just, I don't know if that's right, but sometimes in the situation, it's timing.
Yes.
Yes. If you're having a confrontation or something, and you want to say something, like maybe that's not the best time.
Good.
Or if it's your kid's arguing with you and you just want to say, hey, this is something I really want to tell you, but I don't think right now it's going to.
You're right.
Hear it. Because they're already got the defense up. They're arguing with you or whatever. So sometimes it's like, step back and you know what you want to say, you plan to say it, but you just have to look for the right opportunity.
That's right. That's good wisdom.
Because if you don't, that just shuts it off, or it's not heard.
It's not going to be received.
Right.
They're just gonna walk
Right.
away.
They're gonna
And
be
sometimes I just feel like there's so many times I want to say something, and I'm just like, but I'm not saying it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it does come out eventually.
Yeah.
It just takes time. That like even with your kids, it's just like they're yelling at you. All the years you've experienced with your kids, and you're like, you know what? I'm not gonna say this right now, but or your spouse, or
We need to get to this. Yeah. One last thought, and then we'll move on. But in the world we're living in right now, social media being what it is, fake news and all that, is not the world longing for this? If the church could demonstrate this consistently, we would have such a voice for the world to perk up their ears and say, what is with you guys? The world's gone nuts. I can't trust anything anybody says. But when you speak, boy, you really are saying what you mean, and you're meaning what you say, and you do what you say you're going to do. Oh, if the world could see the church as a holy bride of a holy master who we can trust you, then maybe they'll say, I can trust this Jesus man about God and the kingdom and the world and myself and sin and everything. And what a powerful witness we would have if we were true, like Jesus is true. I can't even go to faith. I have to fact check every dang thing that anyone ever says about anything but their pet and their child, because who knows where that went wrong along the 20 shared link of things. Anyway, that's the world we live in. This is powerful, and Jesus is that for us.